He speaks about conveyancing, always seems such a sort of a boring sort of subject, but actually it's not when these guys are involved. As I mentioned, I did actually buy our own property through AVRillo. I was just amazed at the level of service that was possible and the innovation that was possible as well. I mean, I was getting video messages at 10 o'clock at night from the lady who was helping us with the conveyance. It was just stunning. So, and I think the point was that I know not all solicitors are like that, but you can call the shots here, because you're the guys that can introduce so much business to solicitors, especially if you're persuasive with your clients. Well, we're speaking a lot about persuasion, actually. If you're persuasive with your clients in trying to get instructions on, and as part of that you say, and you need to use a decent solicitor, because if you're just using a regular old-fashioned solicitor, that's going to cause all sorts of problems. Our job is to help you move, and part of that is to advise you who to go to make the whole thing happen. So your control over the whole situation, I'd ramp it up a couple of notches. And they're solicitors, they're professionally qualified, they're entitled to wear suits. We just wear suits because we want to look professional. Not the case, actually. I think we call the shots in this thing. So what I want to do is just cover off a few things. I'm going to sort of break this up into a couple of things. First, different types of presentations and things as well. But I've pulled together a few bits and pieces from various conferences and stuff that I'm doing to give you as much value as I can this afternoon. Primarily focused, of course, on getting your fees up, raising fees, my favourite topic in the whole of the estate agency, and one of the easiest to solve. Well, it's easier for me to talk about it than it is for you to do it, but I promise you it's easier than you think. Now, I say that with some arrogance, I know, and you're thinking, oh, yeah, and been discovered recently, but we'll deal with that as we go through the afternoon. Firstly, a few bits and pieces about the future, possibly. The threats and opportunities in a estate agency. What do we see at the moment as the main threats? What do you feel are the threats to your business at the moment?
Cheap fees.
Cheap fees, okay.
Lack of stock.
Lack of stock? Online agents, okay. Those things, cheap fees, online agents, and lack of stock, they gang up. They have a multiplier effect, don't they, which is a real killer. If there's lots of stuff going on, we could almost cope with cheaper fees, but there just isn't the volume, is there? So we've got to maximise the fee potential out of every single instruction opportunity we can. And the strange thing was, when the market was absolutely flying, loads of agents opened up, didn't they, in competition. When the market stopped flying and went downhill, they rather inconsiderately didn't close down again. So we've got a lot more competition than we should have at a time when there isn't a great deal of volume for all the various reasons we know about. So we feel there's this threat for lower fees and online agents. Now, when Tony asked you this morning about the threat from online agents, there didn't seem to be an overwhelming rush. Oh, bloody online agents are really causing a problem. People said, not too much of an issue. So we need to look at that, and we'll see how that pans out. But there seems to be an unbalanced polarisation going on. And what I mean by that, you've got the online agent and the high street agent. And you may not feel that direct threat at the moment, but the threat is indirect, and it's very real. Now, we know that you know all the stuff about the benefit of being a traditional, but a high street agent as opposed to an online agent. We'll look at some of that stuff in a moment. But what I want to do firstly is just look at how and why this online thing has happened at all. Because I don't know if you remember, 10 years ago, Rightmove had 10% of the listings. Only 10%, all the listings just 10 years ago. Why do you think that might be? What's been the cause of Rightmove's success? Why has Rightmove absolutely nailed it? Because all the agents go in it. Yeah, absolutely. If you look at it, if you were an agent, if you were buying a house previously, you had to register with this agent and that agent, this and that, and it was a bit cumbersome. If only there was one place I could just go and get access to all the properties, 24 hours a day, nobody would hassle me, free of charge. Well, that's exactly what Rightmove did, and they deserve their success because they did it ahead of anybody else, because they had the idea to maximise it in the same way that they did. They formed a monopolistic, duopolistic, triopolistic, not quite, situation, whereby, of course, their fees have racketed up, and we feel the pain of those fees for sure. But what they've done is harnessed something that actually happened to the music industry as well. Because if you look at it, 10 years ago, if I wanted to buy a CD, not sharing a CD, but any CD. I go to a shop, I pay my £15, I would receive that CD, I could play it in my car, play it at home, I would own it, it was mine, and fantastic, I've got ownership. But what's actually happened is I thought that was better than a cassette, the cassette better than a record, and it couldn't get much better than that. But I'm only the consumer. The consumer doesn't know much. You know far more than your consumers. So it's up to you to be the leaders in how you take these things forward. Because what the music industry actually said was, hold on, Richard doesn't really want to buy a CD. I said, yes I do, I really want to buy that CD. Please let me buy that CD. No, you don't want to buy that CD. Hear me out, the music industry said. What you really want is to be able to have access to all music ever written across the history of time. You want it free of charge. You want it now. You want it 24 hours a day, nobody can hassle you. Enter who? Spotify. Absolutely. They did exactly that. What they did was preempt what the customer really wanted. They didn't ask me, because I didn't know. I said, oh, CD is better than the cassette. They were ahead of the game. And a lot of the time, we gain ground if we show our customers that we understand them, but actually we're ahead of their game as well. We understand the potential for what they could want. And so Spotify gives it to you straight away, 24 hours a day. They don't hassle you, can get all music ever written across the history of time. Because there's this, I want it all, I want it now, I want it free type of approach that's filtered into British consumerism very rapidly in the last few years. I want it all, I want it now, I want it free. And that's why the music industry has changed so much. If you actually look at the graph of how CD sales have gone, since the year 2000, right the way down to 2013, I don't even have up to 2017, that's what happened to CD sales. Is that going to happen to a state agency? It's a salutary observation, I wonder. In fact, 3 years ago I spoke at a conference and I said, you've got 3 years left. And that was 3 years ago. So we're on borrowed time. Don't worry, what sounds very negative, don't worry, there's some upside to this as well. But if that's what can happen to an industry so massive as the CD industry, caused by an innovative brain in the music world who said, what does the customer really want? And the customer's now behavioural shift is now moving dramatically across every aspect of what we do. I mean, you look at shopping. You don't go shopping anymore. I don't. If I can get it on Amazon, I go to Amazon. You know, I can get access to everything I could possibly buy. I get it immediately. In fact, I can get it tomorrow with Amazon Prime, and I'm prepared to pay the extra, the 100 quid a year or so to get the Amazon Prime, because I want it now. I've just ordered a new dog basket, new dog bed. I built a window seat at the weekend, and it has dog baskets in it, but I didn't have the cushion thing. So I ordered it on Amazon yesterday. I've just got a ping saying it's been delivered. Now the dogs could have slept in their old basket for weeks if need be, but I want it now. I'm a modern consumer. I want it now. Go to Amazon, pay the extra Amazon Prime. Not interested in cheap. I want it now. And I've got it now. Can't wait to looking forward to getting home to see if it fits my new dog basket. So people are prepared to pay for the thing they really want, if only they know what they want. And our job is to educate them in what could be and what they could actually want. Look at Airbnb. Who'd have thought that every property out there could potentially be a hotel room? And you're bound to say, as many people would have said at the outset, oh, but you can't just go and stay with a stranger. Think of the security risks and everything. Or Uber, you can't just go and ride in a stranger's car. That's terrible. He could rape you. You know? So all the reasons for not doing it, but they just said, let's get over it. A lot of the time, when you see barriers in the way of progress that you think should be made in agency, you've got to just get over it. Someone mentioned about speaking to the solicitors, oh, they wouldn't have that. Get over it. Go to a different solicitor. And so these massive shifts, if you look at, so Uber, Airbnb, Spotify, and Amazon have completely redefined how consumer behaviour is morphing into what it is now. And we can be part of that. I'm not saying we build a brand new model like that. I'm saying we need to understand how consumer behaviour is changing. And interesting that if you think of all the security angle that went with Airbnb and Uber was overcome by reviews. We actually trust strangers a lot more than you expect. If hundreds of other people have stayed, or dozens of other people have ridden in that car or have stayed in that Airbnb, and they say it's fine, well, that's good enough for me. There's this thing called the shiny authentic inversion going on, where companies, agencies, whoever can spend thousands on glossy, shiny brochures to make themselves look good. But guess who wrote them? The agent or their marketing agency. So that's a bit biased. If I'm the consumer, I'm a bit wary of that now, because I know you can produce some beautifully glossy things. But actually, if 80 people say, yeah, it's fine, it's brilliant, they were really good, that's a relief. You can keep your glossy stuff, I'll listen to those people. So we are in the fight for good reviews. And that's the most genuine thing you can possibly go for. Because good reviews come from people who've had a good experience. People who think highly of you. So if we're not cultivating reviews, then we're doing something wrong, or missing an opportunity to do something right. So we've got this balance now, this imbalance going, where you've got the online agents who could take some weight of the market. And in fact, having said that, only about 8% of sales or listings are with online agents. So the direct threat, as you agreed this morning, is not huge, but the indirect threat is massive. The indirect threat is your competitors' response to what they believe to be the online threat. Would you agree with that? So if they think there's this big online threat, which is really cheap, they'll say, oh, well, we've got to be cheap as well. So as you said, the threat is actually your competitors being cheap, but they were prompted to be cheap by the online threat and by huge weakness on their part, which we'll overcome, hopefully. There are ways around this. There are all sorts of things happening at the moment.